This is cutting down the nets. The ball is about to be tipped for the opening round. It's Merry Christmas. This is the greatest day of the year. All right, so you're going to get a preview of the round of 32 2 days before it starts. So you're welcome. I think that's pretty cool. I'm going to use anticipatory lines. I'm looking at Ken Palm's efficiency margin, as the books have basically just set the Ken, as people call it. And I expect them to do the same. But there's a couple spots that I will point out that not being as likely. But so how this works, these games haven't happened yet, so things can change. They don't change much, in my opinion. I've always used the golf handicap reference. If you're a 6 and you go out and you shoot par, now you're a 5.7 or something like that. I mean, it's not like, oh, now you're a scratch golfer. No, you're still a +6, but it's slightly better than +6. So let's get to it. I'm working off one monitor. I'm working off spotty hotel Wi-Fi. This is not going to be the production hour. I'll tell you that for free. So let's get to it. So you're not even getting a show, like a legitimate show. You're going to get slides. All right, Ohio State will play the winner of Virginia Tech, Florida. By the time you're watching this, you'll probably know that. I don't know who wins that game yet. I'm anticipating a line in this mythical matchup between 6 to 8 points, and I have Ohio State beating Virginia Tech by about 4.5, and I have Ohio State beating Florida by about 8.5. So it's likely I lean Ohio State over Florida from against the spread perspective, and it's likely I lean Virginia Tech against Ohio State. The next game on our list would be Illinois versus the winner of Loyola and Georgia Tech. I'm thinking like a 10 to 14 point range there. 10 or 11 for Loyola, and I think they add maybe 2 to 3 points for a Moses Wright absence as well. So I don't see it. I'm anticipating being about 4 points above market on the dogs here. So I see both dogs being within about 6 points of Illinois, and I'm anticipating those type of lines. The Loyola one may come down a little bit because they play slower and they factor that in a little bit. So you may see a 9 or something there. I just don't see a scenario where I'm not on the winner of that game against the spread against Illinois. And it's going to feel super gross, but what do you do? Surprise here. So Arkansas versus winner of Texas Tech, Utah State. I personally like the Hogs. I think they're a really good team. Their profile in my model has it pretty even with both of these teams. They would be a slight favorite over Texas Tech and a one-possession favorite over Utah State. I would expect the Texas Tech line to be close to what I'm guessing, and I have a feeling the Utah State one would be higher, likely leading to an Aggie lean in that spot. Baylor, if you watch the first two shows, you know that I am not as high on Baylor as the market currently is. Reasons for that are their defensive efficiency, and people are just giving them a pass for like 11 games, and that might be the sharp thing to do. I just don't build models like that where it's like, well, I'm going to ignore the last 11 just because I think they're better than that. That's just not how I operate. But if you wanted to have the difference, I'd say I'm probably like 7 points off market. And so if you want to add 3 to my numbers and have Baylor by 5.5 over Wisconsin and Baylor by 2 or 3 over North Carolina, have at it. I still think it will be a dog lean, even if Baylor looks right, whatever that means. You know, like you're going to be able to tell against Hartford. Okay, Okie State against Tennessee or Oregon State. I think Tennessee will be favored. I don't know if the line would stay there, and I actually have Okie State favored. So I'm anticipating an Okie State bet if Okie State's getting points. Otherwise, maybe a lean on Okie State. If they draw the Beaver, The Beavers I have within 4 of Okie State, and I'm expecting a line closer to 7. Let's say Liberty beats Okie State. I think the line will be similar to what the Tennessee or what the Liberty Okie State line was, but probably shaded a bit for the public attention placed on Liberty for pulling the upset. So maybe a 6. And then I would have Oregon State. The market would have them favored, and I have Oregon State winning by 3. Remember, the top team is like the home spread, so to speak. That's why these numbers are flipped, because I set Liberty as the main there. All right, Purdue Nova. I have close to a pick. I think the market will as well. Kind of depends how Villanova looks without Gillespie, if they get past Winthrop. If they do not, I would have Purdue as about 8.5 to 9 over Winthrop, and I bet we would see a similar line to what we saw against Villanova, somewhere in that 6-7 range, again accounting for some public attention there. You saw I liked Clemson more than Rutgers. There's people in the industry that obviously disagree with me. I don't love it. It's just Clemson's getting points, and I have them as slight favorites. So that when you have matchups like that, they just kind of extrapolate, meaning, here's a perfect example. I expect whoever Houston plays the line to be about the same, 6, 7, 8 points, something like that. If Houston played Clemson, it would be like a small lean on Houston, but if they played Rutgers, it'd probably be a more aggressive position against Rutgers. So, last game of the Sunday round of 32, West Virginia against San Diego State or Syracuse. I actually have San Diego State rated slightly higher than West Virginia and would expect them to get points in this matchup. So probably a Aztec lean if they trip up against Syracuse. Probably 4 to 6 points would be the point spread, and I see it as 3.5. Depends how much how it looked getting there, if you know what I mean. Like if Syracuse suffocated at the Aztecs with their zone, that narrative would build. West Virginia played with Morehead State for a little bit. That's where those things affect these numbers and then affect mine a little bit. But I have a feeling the market reacts more than my data does. Florida State, if they draw Colorado, I see as a very close game and would lean Colorado in a very small game. That just shows you I have respect on Colorado. I truly do. It's just their first round matchup is not good because I really respect what Georgetown's done for the last 6-7 weeks. So I would have Georgetown also as close to a pick'em, but would expect them to get a lot of points against Florida State. Kansas against USC or Drake. Drake, I don't know how they won last night. They didn't do anything right, but pulled it off. Something to note, Tank Hemphill was back, but was he? He barely played. Wasn't a factor in the game a whole lot, so be interested to see if he gets a little more run in either their matchup with SC, and if they win, a matchup potentially versus Kansas or Eastern Washington. So, I think the market may have USC as a favorite. It's bold to hang them as a favorite against a very public team like Kansas. I have Kansas by 3.3, but most analytics have USC as a little better. So if USC was favored, which I just have a hard time thinking that actually happens, I guess we'll see. And then I would have Kansas over Drake unless saw some crazy stuff. All right, Michigan. The Michigan fade is on for me. Might be a fish, might have gills, might be a bad idea. Who knows? But I'm anticipating 8 to 10 point lines here. Maybe less, but I don't think they're going to get less enough. So if it was LSU, I think it'd be close for me, leaning LSU. And if it was Bonnie, fire the cannons. Virginia. I had Virginia and Ohio near pick'em. So in this scenario, I mean, you could insert Ohio in these matchups and see the same thing. So I'll kind of explain that. So Virginia, Creighton, I would expect to be close to a pick'em. from my model, and I expect the market to be similar to that as well. If Virginia faced Santa Barbara, I would think the line would be similar to what it was for Santa Barbara and Creighton, and I would have Santa Barbara within 4 of Virginia. So, sub in Ohio for Virginia if they pull the upset. I actually would have Ohio real close to Creighton, and I know they'd be getting more points than that. And I would have Ohio, 3 or 4 over Santa Barbara. So we'll see. Watch and see that one. All right. Here comes Bama versus UConn or Maryland. Some surprising data here is both teams will be very competitive with Alabama from a median projection standpoint. I anticipate the lines to be shaded more towards Alabama, especially if they whip Iona, which I think is possible. Again, I've mentioned this, I think, 15 times this season. I live off median projections. Alabama is not a good median projection team. They have a lot of outlier performances based on the style of play that they have. They play fast. They shoot a lot of threes. So the median outcome is hard to predict for this team. So while it may look like big plays or no-brainer plays on the underdogs here, I will be giving that plenty of pause and thought before betting against Alabama in any spot in this tournament. Power ratings, love Iowa. They're 5th in KenPom, I think 4th in Bart Torvik. And Oregon is respected like they're a top 20 KenPom team, but they're not. And they haven't done anything recently that makes me change that. It's just a respect factor. They respect Altman. They respect the personnel, but they haven't shown it, and they haven't shown it for a really long time this season. So it's almost like their numbers are being bet as anticipatory numbers of I think this is the game Oregon gets it together, and I don't think that's a median projection forecast. So this is where I see it. I would have Iowa by about 10.5 over either team. I think you could see a big number against VCU. Again, analytics like the Hawkeyes, and I think they will be rewarded with a pretty big number. Gonzaga, speaking of big numbers, Gonzaga I have by 16 to 17 over Oklahoma or Missouri. You may see a 12.5. You may see an 18. I mean, I just don't know what they will do. So I'm kind of playing it in the middle of maybe a 14 to 15 point line, which is significant for a second round matchup and probably enough to scare away most people, but I would take Gonzaga at those numbers. Last game, Texas versus the winner of BYU, UCLA. A lot of analytics and myself prefer BYU over Texas from a data standpoint. They do cause a lot of matchup problems. However, I'm anticipating that line to be tight. So if we were in a situation where Texas was laying 3 and you had a BYU plus 3, I have BYU favored by 3. So could be going against the Longhorns here, and then slight lean if they played UCLA and I saw a number greater than 2 possessions. But I have Texas by 4.3 from a median projection standpoint over UCLA. That's it. Hypothetical, mythical matchups, but stuff doesn't move that much. And I think it's important to have a plan of what you are going to anticipate and what you are going to do based on what's hung. Many years ago, I had the fishiest play of all time. Now I've back-tested this model, so I know what it actually said. And I think the game was Illinois, Miami, something like that. And I loved Miami. And Illinois was a gritty team, but just ugly. In backtesting, I found out that year Illinois was rated higher than Miami in my model. I didn't know my model existed yet, hadn't done it. Again, this is all through backtesting. It came out, I think, at 2.5 Miami over Illinois. And my friends jumped on it, and I was getting beers or something, And I missed it, and I'm like, oh, I'll bet it later. And then it was 5.5. And I got to the counter, and it was 6. I'm like, still, I don't care what that number is. Like, give me Miami. So, don't be a fish. Have a plan. Know what you're expecting the number to be, and react accordingly. And as always, enjoy the games. Don't bet on teams you hate. Just sit a game out if you have to. Don't bet more than you can afford. This is supposed to be fun. Don't make it stressful. Thanks for stopping by. Cutting Down the Nets, Las Vegas, Suite Edition, which at check-in they made it very clear this was a junior suite. And I said, it's a suite, right? He's like, what junior suite? No, thank you, sir. Thanks for stopping by. Cutting Down the Nets.